All right. Welcome back to the Convo Couch, everyone. Pasta Jardula here.
And I'm Fiorella.
Are you serious? I thought you were frozen for a second there.
No, I'm
ones and twos. Fam,
I'm busy sharing. I'm being shadow banned, like really bad on Twitter, like really bad.
well, at least you're not labeled as freaking Russian state affiliate.
I think I will be because I am being like ridiculously like shadow banned.
We just on YouTube we're getting banned right now, like shadow banned and I mean ridiculously on YouTube, guys. Wow. I mean, wow. Guys, do us a favor, hit the like button, hit the share button. Now is the time. Wow. I mean, they're just, yeah. All right. Well, I guess that's what we got to deal with. This is America.
Well,
this is America.
You're in America. I'm just a Russian asset.
And there is nobody on right now. Nobody on. The only person that's on is Jackman Radio, and that's a totally different crowd than the Convo Couch.
Jackman Radio? What is that?
Eric Jackman and his brother, they're twin brothers.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
They're awesome. Mike Jackman, Eric and Mike. They do imitations. They do the Trump. They do the Alex Jones. Yeah. They do a bunch of invitations. Reed Coverdale's on with them right now. Reed, I met at the Freedom Fest, Libertarian Fest. He was with Clint Russell of the Freedom Movement. And those are like the anti-interventionist, anti-imperialist libertarians. That's what they talk about. Scott Horton was there. Fun stuff. We had an interview with Scott Horton. Put it up on the Convo Couch YouTube. If you guys want to check it out, please go do so. And share that video out there because it's very, very important. He's now the leader of I don't want to say the leader. I mean, he's part of the Mises Caucus that's now gotten power. I saw Angela McArdle. She said this.
Plus is really excited about this because he mentioned it before and he's mentioning it again.
Yes. Angela said to say hi. So she's, and like I said to the audience, they're targeting the anti-imperialist left. So that's who they're looking after and going after and trying to get people to come aboard to get an actual third party in this country. So they're the only ones who got a real chance. Let's be honest right now. So
I don't think anybody has a chance because we don't have fair elections, but
that is absolutely true. But as far as having their shit together on the ballot, the foot soldiers, the people power. There was this year's Freedom Fest was a lot of libertarians, and there was a lot of them out there. So we'll see. That's for another day. Let's get rolling with the show because we do have a guest today coming on in a half hour. Fam, what do you want to start with?
We're starting with in section 1.
Okay, because we'll probably be able to get through that section and then do Garland and then do the other sections. But I don't know. I don't know if you know this, fam.
Oh God!
I'm a newspaper guy.
He says we have like a short time before our guest comes, and then he brings up the newspaper guy.
It's breaking news. I mean, how can we not? We can't skip news guy. Would you tell Fidel Castro to leave the room? He's a newspaper.
You're not Fidel. You're not Fidel. Okay?
He is a newspaper guy, as am I. So newspaper guys get some love. Biden tests positive for COVID-19. Harris tests negative. Yeah. And then up above, fam, it says Trump chose not to act at the January 6 hearings, fam. That's newspaper guy coming right at you. So they're trying to make you concentrate on certain things. So, yeah.
Like always, fam. Like always.
Yeah, like always, fam. So let's start.
All right. So this very important thing happened today where Russia and Ukraine signed individual separate deals with Turkey. And it's like a food deal because basically there is a shortage of grain. There's a shortage of food because they'll say, because of Putin's war and what Putin's doing is what the West says. But in reality, it's because the sanctions have been placed on Russia. And we know sanctions are an act of war, siege war. And this is from antiwar.com. So they were talking about this yesterday and they were saying earlier today, actually, officials from Ukraine, Russia, and Turkey will meet in Istanbul on Friday to sign a deal proposed by the UN to facilitate the export of Ukrainian grain. And so that's what they were doing. And this was announced tentatively last week after there was talks that Turkey hosted between Russia and Ukraine and the UN, which is involved, Gutierrez. And under this agreement, of course, the Ukrainian vessels are going to be coming in, and the Ukrainian vessels would be guiding these ships out of Ukraine's ports, which are heavily mined. And of course, Russia would just agree to not attack them. And that's basically what happened today. That was signed today. And NATO, the US and NATO have been entirely not involved in this whole situation until the last second, where the UN Secretary General Antonio Gutierrez is going to actually did co-sign the accord. And Ned Price decided to have an opinion on this whole thing, even though, like I said, they haven't tried to broker any sort of peace agreement or anything like that in regard to the food. He said, "We will continue to work with our partners to hold Russia accountable for its implementation." So they're still peddling, this is Russia's fault. We're going to hold Russia accountable in spite of the UN. And the UN, of course, is closely tied to the West. And Turkey is the one that has been really pushing this, because they really see, they've been trying to kind of play mediator. Turkey is a state where you can fly to if you're trying to go to Russia. Turkey is a state, you know, that is like that well, a country. Like I say state, like in terms of just like as an existing state, but it's the only place where we can go. I mean, it's the shortest flight. You can go to other cities, but it's the shortest flight. And Russia, of course, has continued to deny that this is their fault, saying that Western sanctions are to blame for slowing down its food and fertilizer imports. And they're also blaming Ukraine for mining the entrances to its Black Sea ports. And this is just a picture of the video, and we're going to show the video quickly. It's a really quick video, just showing them at the meeting. In fact, Oz, you can just go ahead and play the video if you want, because I'll just go and talk over it. There's really no audio. It's just like a quick video. But basically, the Russian Minister of Defense, Shoigu, arrived in Istanbul, and he arrived in order to sign this deal with Turkey, and Turkey was going to sign this deal with Ukraine. Technically, Russia and Ukraine weren't signing these things together because they're at war with each other. But the whole document, of course, must be signed by Russia, by Russian, Turkish, and UN representatives, all of which who were there. So it was a very important thing that happened. Did he play it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So slide 12. This is like one of the more important things that happened of this whole meeting. One of the things that really, I think, out of everything, especially today with the attacks that are happening in Syria from these white helmets, these moderate rebels, I think comes into play here, because the Russian defense minister, Shoigu, said in this meeting that the presence of the U.S. armed forces in Syria is a violation of international norms, and that Washington is training terrorists at their bases in Syria. And we know that Washington has already done this before all over West Asia, but particularly Syria is living the consequences of what's happening here. And he flat out said that. And I think that's something important to say in front of a Ukrainian delegation, in front of the UN, because it puts it out there. It puts out what we've known to be true for a long time. But you know, and so they signed this agreement, right? And these were separate agreements, as I said, with Turkey. And basically, it clears the way for exporting millions of Ukrainian grain, because Ukraine is second to Russia in grain. And it also clears a way to have Russian grain and fertilizer. which ends this whole entire standoff that has threatened food security around the globe. And of course, the vast majority of media blames Russia, but we've already discussed why Russia says that's not the case. And so they signed these separate deals with UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres and Turkish Defense Minister Hulusi Akar. And it was witnessed by Erdogan. And Guterres said today there is a beacon on the Black Sea, a beacon of hope, a beacon of possibility, a beacon of relief in a world that needs it more than ever. We don't know if this is going to be enough, but I think it's definitely a good thing. And of course, the Ukrainian and Russian military delegations, like I said, had reached an agreement. And what I want to reiterate is that Ukraine and Russia had to sign separate agreements, and they wanted to make sure that people understood that Ukraine does not sign any documents with Russia because, like I said, they're still at war. And I did a little thread just quickly. I'm going to go over it. Basically, what constitutes this agreement, which is extremely important to understand because there could be complications here if somebody decides not to follow this agreement, which has happened before. So this whole point is to open up Ukraine's Black Sea ports and other ports like Odessa and just to have this route be possible for the shipment of these grains. So these Ukrainian ports will not be cleared of mines, but the ships are going to have to use a safer path to go through it. And there will be a coordination center in Istanbul that will monitor the departure of ships from Ukraine, and it includes Turkey and Russia as well. So the coordination center will monitor any sort of movement between Ukraine, Turkey, and Russia, period. And that's largely what's happened. And you guys can see the video where they're literally just signing this document. And that's what happened today. And it was, like I said, a delegation of Turkish, Russian, Ukrainian, and of course the UN was there. And the vessels that go into Ukraine, this is really important because Russia was afraid that Ukraine would smuggle weapons via the vessels, right? And so to circumvent that, they're basically going to be inspected for weapons to make sure that none of that happens. There's not going to be a military escort of these vessels. The Ukrainian ports will open in around 2 weeks. And this agreement is valid for 120 days, which is like 4 months. And Erdogan said that this should be, this corridor in the Black Sea will be operational in a matter of days, that this is historic to prevent hunger across the globe. And he is optimistic in solving the crisis in the near future. So he thinks that this is a path towards peace. I don't necessarily think that's the case because literally the US just approved, like, I think it was millions, 175 million or something ridiculous like that, of more aid for Ukraine. And as long as they continue doing that, Russia's going to continue moving west. Now, UN Secretary General, of course, reiterated that this is going to provide for the export of grain from the ports of Odessa, the Black Sea, and the South. And he said, again, that the world needs to alleviate this food crisis. And basically, that's it. That's it. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. They're going to try this agreement out. Could there be the potential for somebody hitting somebody or somebody, like hiding a weapon or hiding people? That was a concern of Russia. Also, just so everybody knows, Russia isn't, Russia will be allowed to also transport their grain. And they're not going to try to, capitalize on this and say, oh, we're going to transport our weapons. They said as much that they're going to follow this agreement. We'll see what happens. But is this a step towards peace? I think it's just a step towards literally preventing Europe from starvation. an attempt to prevent that, because these people know what's going to happen if that happens. I mean, everybody's protesting right now in Europe. There's so much going on. So many leaders are leaving. They're being replaced. Italy just the president of Italy just dissolved parliament, and now they're going to have snap elections, and that's the result of the prime minister resigning. And so we're seeing more of this happen. Estonia, it's just what I think they see on the radar is like there's going to be huge issues if they don't at least try to resolve this crisis. So that's essentially it. I don't know if you want to say anything, Pasta, about.
Really not much to say about that. I mean, good. We'll see how it goes. I mean, I would say the leaders that are getting thrown out of office, who they're being replaced by. I don't know if things are going to fly in Sri Lanka, where the parliament pretty much picked a guy who's been inside their politics for a long time. In fact, they were chanting his name as they were protesting. But when it comes to the situation in England, you're just going to have another guy from the WEF come in there, a guy who's all weffed up. I think 4 of the 5 top candidates are all WEF guys who have said, like, I believe Rishi Sunak has already said that, he wants to move to central bank digital currencies of sorts, central banks, digital currencies. So, you have guys who are already in place. So it's going to be interesting to see who these guys come, who's stepping on in. But yes, I think this is going to help at least some starving people get some food, because we see what happens when, not just the military actions, but all the sanctions and everything that go into play. A lot of poor people will suffer. So this is a good move.
Yeah, and I think it's going to help, like as you pointed out the other day, it's going to help developing countries, because developing countries are also the ones most affected, particularly in the global south, Africa, the continent of Africa in particular. So let's just move on in, fam, to this next section, because this is hilarious. I don't know if you saw this, but the head of the CIA said Putin's entirely too healthy. And this is funny, coming at a time where Brandon's got COVID, guys, where Joe Biden got the vid. And you can see how all of the media put this out. So, which is why I have this picture. You can see CNN, Euronews, Politico, Sky News, New York Post. And I have the Political one up so everybody can see. CIA director, Putin too healthy. William Burns, of course, is the current CIA director. And this is kind of interesting because for the longest time, the media has been saying that Putin is dying, that Putin has cancer, that he's terminal, that he's ill, that all of the stuff, right? And here's the CNN one. And I went through the CNN one because I thought the CNN one was the most ridiculous. And so in saying that Putin is too healthy, he's basically just knocking down any sort of theory that Putin is sick, which you would think benefits Russia. But what he's doing is he's turning it around on them. And apparently this is an unusually candid assessment, and he didn't just say he was healthy, he said he was entirely too healthy. And coming from the CIA director, we know who the CIA is, right? It's kind of scary that they're just flat out saying this. I mean, imagine Putin saying Biden is too healthy. I mean, the media would go insane. They'd be like, oh my gosh, they're threatening our president. The Russians are coming after our president. But the head of the CIA says that, and it's just, these people are just so dumb, and they're flat out putting it everywhere. And I think they're putting it everywhere because they want to create this picture that Putin is still a threat. Because right now, that's still their agenda, that Putin is this giant threat. And that's how they're shifting this narrative. And so he said that it didn't constitute a formal intelligence judgment, but when he was asked if Putin was unhealthy or stable, he said that there are a lot of rumors about President Putin's health, and as far as we can tell, he's entirely too healthy. And he went on to say the writer of this article, which is what I wanted to show too, was just how ridiculous this writer is, right? Because look what he says on slide 28. He says, that's the nature of Putinism, a sort of postmodern dictatorship built around one man. The Kremlin has worked so hard to create an aura around Putin as the country's sole problem solver. He hosts an annual call-in show where he literally takes on the role of pothole fixer in chief. And over the course of 2 decades, he has consolidated power, building a system that is driven by the whims and fixations of one person. Obvious case in point, the invasion of Ukraine. So without a clear successor to Putin, Russia is always a few sneezes away from a full-blown political crisis. So not only are they saying Putin is a threat and that this whole just aura surrounding Putin where people make up gossip and everybody's so intrigued is part of Putinism. And he's also dissing the fact that if Putin goes, that Russia is going to go into a political crisis. So they're doing this multi-pronged approach here to fearmonger people against Russia still, and to also have this idea that they're weak, that Russia is losing this conflict, that Russia doesn't really have the means to continue. When we're seeing the exact opposite, we're seeing Russia expand because they keep gaining territories, and we're seeing the ruble go up. We're seeing, gas prices in Russia go down. We're seeing a lot of countries that wanted to stop getting Russian gas have to go back and say, sorry, we can't do that, including Hungary is one of those countries. And I think, it's just reality is completely opposite of what they're trying to show here. And Dmitry Peskov said that Putin was fine and in good health, and that this is nothing but hoaxes. And the writer goes on to say, Burns' statement, even if made in jest, perhaps tells us a lot more about Western policymakers than it does about Putin's fitness. And it does, because here it is. This is why this is a disturbing statement, because he said, it reflects a strong element of wishful thinking when it comes to the Kremlin leader. It suggests that even the most worrying international crisis might simply evaporate if one person, Putin, disappears from the world scene. So they're basically saying if Putin dies, or if we kill Putin, all our problems will go away. And they're saying it in the most neoliberal, way possible, where they're not flat out saying it, but that's what they're saying. And the decision to invade Ukraine, he continues, came down to one person, the Russian president, who seems to be driven by his own warped reading of history and a dose of imperial ambition. So again, they're still continuing to say Putin invaded Russia and he's driven by this and by his own warped, mental reading of the situation. And if he's gone, guys, all of our problems go away. So it's almost like they're advocating for Putin to stop existing. And I think that's really scary that they can do that, and people are just like not realizing this, right?
They've been trying to make him like Thanos since the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's always been about this one guy and whatnot. And it's CIA jargon. Really, it's like,
and it's on every media, right?
They're just, I don't watch the mainstream media, so I don't know. This is the first I'm hearing of it. But it wouldn't surprise me if they would blast this stuff everywhere, because once again, if they can just put all the blame on one guy, and that's the problem with Americans. They look at things like good and evil. They want their foreign policy simple, like bite-sized food on their plate, where they can understand, oh, that's Thanos, it's bad, it's Putin, yeah. So that's what they never try to bring any complexity. They always just try to make it about this one person being bad and the other person being good. They got their villain, so it's Putin.
And we'll bring our guest in a second. I know he's here. I just want to point this out. This video is hilarious because I wanted to juxtapose who the sick one is here. And Joe Biden, said that he had cancer, but obviously he was referring to a while ago. And so it just sent out this whole thing of people making memes about Biden being gone and Kamala taking over. And so here's this video, because Biden got COVID, right? And in July of 2021, Biden said, you're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations. And he's tested positive for COVID. So I just want to play the video to remind everybody that Joe Biden said you couldn't get COVID if you got vaccinated.
The various shots that people are getting now cover that. You're okay. You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations. Yeah.
All right. So Biden was wrong, like a lot of people were. And he had also said, this is from RT, last fall, our patience is wearing thin with those who refuse to get vaccinated. They could look forward to a winter of severe illness and death. Remember when he said that? Because I remember when he said that, and it was just so enraging that he was allowed to say that. And this is why he got so much hatred from a lot of people that were against these mandates, because he was basically wishing upon people death upon people. And so he also made headlines, like I said, when he announced that he had cancer as a result of oil pollution. But then the White House said that he was referring to his previous experience with localized non-melanoma skin cancers. So, just pointing out that Biden, if he gets ill, he has access to superior medical health care, an army of doctors, and his own medical suite. Just to juxtapose how many people don't have any of that. Like, COVID is obviously not a serious illness, but guys, like it's just throwing it in your face. So he's the president, so he's going to be fine because he has all of these things provided for him. He's 79. His prospects are good, and they have weaponized Joe Biden getting COVID to promote the vaccines. Oh, he's good because he's up to date with his vaccine shots. And they've been juxtaposing that with Donald Trump. Yeah. Donald Trump, who used other medications. And at that point, there wasn't any vaccines available, so he couldn't get it. And they're basically, if you go to slide, I believe, 38, they compare, the Boston Globe compares just how when Donald Trump, things are so different than with Joe Biden. And they, of course, talk about how the vaccines weren't available. So Trump was on his deathbed, that he was really struggling to breathe. And the doctors gave him oxygen and reportedly put him on a ventilator. So they're using this whole thing to continue fear mongering about COVID.
They wouldn't let him die right now because it would destroy the whole narrative about all the boosters and whatnot. And that's why they have the video of him. Like, guys, mild symptoms, right? Like he's doing the Chris Rock and he got smacked by Will Smith. Said, thank God I had the booster. That smack would have been a lot harder. But also to the big sin about this situation right now is because they've always put that rhetoric out there about, oh, if you're not there's no excuse if you're not boosted. There's no excuse right now. You're not going to get sick if you don't do this. The fact is that they have all these distractions that people don't even know and understand. When you're looking at data, say, coming from England and other places, Dr. Urso was at a Ron Johnson hearing, or whatever you want to call those. And he said, simply, again, he goes, we're finding that people who are double boosted are like almost like 400 times more likely to get coronavirus than those who've just, been previously infected and ill and have an immune system to fight it off. So that's the real big sin, is that we don't know that information because they kind of, flood that out. And that's the information they, suppress and demonetize for. That's the big sin here, in my personal opinion.
Yeah. And we're not even allowed to say that most of the time, right? Because they'll take videos down. So hopefully they don't take this one down because I mean, yeah, it's out there. I mean, Tucker Carlson is talking about it. Yeah. And people are, now that Tucker Carlson is talking about it, people are like paying attention. But it's like, a lot of us have been saying this for 2 years. Like thank you, Tucker, for putting it out there. But I mean, this is and they mentioned Paxlovid as well, right? And they're still saying, the vaccines are safe and effective. The CDC says blah, blah, blah. They take their time to talk about the boosters and that, this is the virus is still dangerous and transmittable, but Biden will be fine because he took his vaccine. So that's just what I wanted to juxtapose who's really sick and just how they're trying to manipulate this to really promote the vaccines and vaccines in general, but this one in particular, and how they take time to also trash Trump and say how this is so much better now with Biden. And so Kamala Harris, of course, a lot of people put out memes out there. This one right here from Nick, Kamala Harris when Biden said he had cancer. And then this other one where it just has Kamala's ridiculous laughs. And there were so many, videos that people put out there of just making fun of, if Kamala takes over, blah, blah, blah. Guys, it wouldn't matter. They're not in charge, either of them. They're really not. So it just wouldn't matter.
All right. Let's get on to our guest, because our guest is here. We'll hold on to the super race. We'll read them after. Been a while since he's back on the show, but I'm glad he's back on the show. We could talk a little bit of everything. We could talk about Paxlovid being the Charles Barkley drug of the COVID. It's going to rebound and you're going to get it back. And that's my attempt to do my best, what I call my best Nixonism. Garland Nixon is here. I don't know if you heard this before, if Steve didn't tell you, but I've been saying Garland has this thing where he has these sayings where I'm calling them Nixonisms, right? Like one of my favorite Nixonisms, which I use all the time when people are like, hey man, I'm getting shadow banned, I'm getting demonetized. And I say, well, hey, you're over the target if you're taking flack. And that's like a Garland thing. And you were on Crosstalk not too long ago, and you had a couple good Nixonisms out there. Thank you so much for joining the show today, Garland. How are you doing? What's been going on and what are you up to?
I'm doing great, enjoying myself. And, as far as the Nixonisms, I'm like Casey Stengel said when he won all those championships with the New York Yankees. They said, you're a genius. You are such a genius. He said, yes, being a genius is the art of taking credit for all the home runs that someone else hit. So, about 90% of Nixonisms are things that I heard somewhere and thought they were funny and just repeated them.
Well, here's one. Geniuses borrow, only thieves steal. So I'm glad that you say that. Now we can call you a genius because you're borrowing them. And it's funny because a lot of people don't realize, I think that Casey Stengel got a lot of his stuff from Yogi Berra, right? Or was it the reverse? I don't know who's older, but I know they kind of like, they would do those things. Like they said, they give you money, which is just as good as cash. Stuff like that all the time. So, Yeah. Garland, let's get serious over here because I've been waiting to have you on here. I have some questions and there's a lot of things we can talk about. And by the way, I think your show on Rokfin has been amazing. The show, The Critical Hour, has been so great. I don't know if there's like a new improved Garland or what's going on, but every day I listen to you, it seems like you're just letting it rip and it's been some amazing stuff. Your tweets have been on fire. So thank you. But let me ask you this question, because I want to address something. For those who don't know out there, Garland used to be a police officer, correct? All right. I don't know if it's important to say sheriff or city officer or what you did. Can you tell us exactly what position you held?
Well, I was a police official, actually. I retired holding the rank of major. I was assistant commander of field ops. So I think what's important in my law enforcement career is that I was a commander of the training division, so I'm intricately familiar with police training. I was the commander of the investigations division, so I'm intricately familiar with police investigations. So a lot of it, which included recruiting, which included internal investigations. So a lot of things that people are concerned with is regarding these police shootings, police violence, and police officers being held accountable fall in the realm of expertise that at the time I didn't know that I was, prepping for a media career one day, but those are things that I know pretty well and I understand quite well.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this question because, we talk about the term solidarity, right? Like we're looking for solidarity out there right now. As a nation, we are split. One thing when it comes to policing in the country, a lot of conservatives tend to back the blue. They really do. They elevate, cops in this country. In fact, Fiorella can tell you when we were at the Capitol on January 6th, I don't think it's funny, but it was really kind of like, it was eye-opening to see some of these conservatives Trumpers go, come on, blue, we fought for you, as they were getting tear gassed. Like they couldn't believe that the cops would do it to them, right? And we've always said that at the end of the day, the police officers, they serve power. They serve the 1%. That's just the way it is. I'm not going to say that I'm not one of those anti-police people. You know what I'm saying? I believe defund the police was a wrong message. I believe it should have been reimagine the police or demilitarize the police or something, that doesn't say just get rid of the police, because we knew it would never kind of go over. But the thing I get criticized a lot for is always pointing out the class issue over the race issue, right? And a lot of leftists that are people of color say that until there is recognition that a black person's life is way more at risk than a white person when they go out there, even though I say all our lives are at risk. Obviously, we do have some privileges and Black people's lives are more at risk. But at the end of the day, the security state wants us all dead. They don't care, What are my responsibilities as a white man as far as acknowledging the situation that goes at hand? Do we need to have some form of recognition from white people in this country towards Black people whose lives are at risk before we move forward? Or should we understand that there's a class issue here that at the end of the day, until we get rid of this 1%, nothing's going to change?
One of the things I think this is important is to understand that the issue of class and race in America are inextricably linked. So you're not wrong to say it's a class issue. I always talk about the issue of class from a perspective of solutions, because I do not believe that America currently, as it is culturally, will act in a way to say we're going to address the issues of race that have created an environment where a particular race of people but have been denied some basic rights, and that has held them back economically, particularly for many, many years. I don't think for the whole of our country's existence. So I don't think that America is ready at this time to accept and address that particular issue. That being said, I think, so the question is, if America is not culturally ready to say, okay, we created this issue as a country and we need to resolve it as a country and make a certain group whole, then what are our options? And see, that's important. What are our options? It's easy to say Black people should get this, that, or this is the way we should address this or whatever. Is that a legitimate option? Right now, I think the most legitimate option, the most effective way and the quickest way to address the issue of race, the issues of race that Black people are dealing with, would be through economic class. That's something, God knows if you could even get any of that stuff through, but because most Black people fall in working class, working poor, and poor, if you address the issues of the working class, the working poor, and poor, you will address the issues of the economic class that most Black people fall into. And you won't have to just say, we're making Black people whole because they've been screwed and held back for the last 400 years, which may be true. But realistically, can you go to enough of America and say this is an issue and get them to say yes? I don't think so. So that's what it becomes to me. What are our legitimate options that we have? Not only that will in fact make America better. So you can do things to address the issues of Black America and without getting the pushback as much so from the people who would be anti-racial justice. And you could also make America a better place because those issues such as, free community college, you're going to help a lot of Black folks. A lot of Black folks go to community college because they can't afford to go to major, to a 4-year school or a state school. And some don't go at all because they can't afford it. So I'm with you on that. And I think regardless of how we express it, it is an effective way to address racism and the history of racism. And that's what's important.
Fam, can I do a follow-up real quick? Because I want to stay really quick on the subject here and stuff. Okay, well, here's a solution, Garland. We come together realizing that, because this is something I have a hard time, I don't want to say a hard time dealing with when I talk to people. I believe there's a group of elitists out there. I believe it's the 1% and the rest of us, the oligarchs and the rest of us. That is the huge divide of what's going on right now. So my solution would be to let's take care of these oligarchs, get rid of them, and then get in a room and decide what's best for us. Because I think there is sometimes a looking at our neighbor going, as white people, you need to realize the oppression that we go through. And then a lot of white people go, okay, but what can we really do to fix the situation when it's always the elites making these decisions? They're the ones who've always prospered. And I'm not saying that, white people haven't played into racial, moments throughout our history and take advantage of themselves. I mean, they have had much more better opportunities. But at the end of the day, isn't it the elites who are making the rules that say, let me keep my population divided amongst each other so that we can run off with all the money and the resources?
So we've got a couple of tough things we're dealing with here. I'm glad you brought that up because that brings in some really significant issues. Number one, there's the issue of these oligarchs, and we could name some of them right off, Bezos and Gates and the Koch brothers, blah, blah, blah. But is the problem truly at this point the oligarchs, or is the problem the system that funnels all of the money to the top 1% and creates oligarchs and makes the oligarchs that we have even more powerful? And is there a delineation between the two? Because of course, as you know, if you're one of the oligarchs, you can now fund members of Congress and you can buy out the political system so that it helps you even more. So I think I don't have the answer to that, to be quite honest to you. But I do think we have to look at what you're saying, the system of oligarchs and the system that produces oligarchs and continues to fund everything towards the top 1%. You know, a perfect example of that to me is after 2008, when we were told, yes, the GDP is going up, the gross domestic product is going up, therefore we're having a recovery. But when you looked at the numbers, you found that the banks were taking people's homes, they were writing off the loans, reselling the homes, renting them out, whatever, and making a profit. And that was then counted as part of the gross domestic product. And that's one of the metrics they use to say that we were in a recovery, when in fact, the banks were simply making even more money off of the economic destruction of 2008. So we're looking at a system that oppresses people, that preys economically on the working class, the working class, the working poor, and the poor, and then uses that oppression to say, no, everybody's doing fine. It looks like the tides are rising and the ships are on their way up again. So it's those oligarchs. All I'll say is, I'll leave by saying this. I'm with you as long as we don't get too focused on the oligarchs and we don't get to the point where we just get caught up demonizing the oligarchs so much that we forget about this system that produces oligarchs in a manner that if every one of them drop dead tomorrow, they'll be replaced by a new crop, because this is what this system creates.
Thank you, Garland.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I think sometimes, especially, you know, and I don't like to stereotype, but I do see like some people who are on the right focus on the particular people, and it's these people. Like if you eliminate them, yeah, like 100%. It's like, yeah, but you can get rid of all those people, and they will be replaced by somebody else, because power corrupts, and the system that we're set in is set up to be this centralized power form, and so you're just going to have an endless replacement of people, even if you eliminate every single one of these oligarchs. I 100% agree on that. And just shifting over to this particular case, right? Jayland Walker, he died from over 60 bullet wounds. And the situation with him was that there was the juxtaposition of the recent shootings that have been happening all over July 4th, et cetera, and in Texas. And they always say, okay, well, here's this white guy, this shooter, or this this white presenting person, and this is a mass shooter, and they get walked out, they get arrested. Why does the black guy always constantly get shot down, and then 60 bullets? And we'll talk about the 60 bullet situation. But then a white man in West Virginia was also killed in a very similar fashion. Now, the immediate reaction was, yeah, but if he were black, he would have been shot a lot quicker. They tried to reason with him. He kept walking around. He wasn't listening. So again, so we're back at the same thing. Is it fair though? Because how do you get past that? If, and I can ask you this question in particular, people are emotional creatures. They when they see something happen, and now because of cell phones and because of independent media, because of everything, we're seeing these shootings happen. I mean, it just happened in New York today, I think, where there was a kid with a Nerf gun, and they shot him, and the New York police shot him and killed him. So you keep seeing this, and so people are going to react emotionally and say, okay, well, I'm seeing more black people get killed. I'm seeing this. Why is nobody going to listen to that part? How can you just skip that and just say, well, this is about class? And I agree with you. I understand that it is about class, but how are you going to get those people on board in terms of of really trying to ignore this, not ignore, but kind of put it aside when they continuously see this being very lopsided against a certain population.
Now, keep in mind, I'm not saying it's only about class. What I'm actually saying is class, race and economic class are inextricably linked, right? That's not saying that that's either or. That's saying that they're linked in a manner, particularly in the United States, because more Black people tend to be in the lower economic classes for a variety of reasons. Here's the thing. Let me add something to you that I always add, because you'll have people say cops are racist, cops are this, cops are that. Again, we get to individuals, bad apples, individuals. It's not the system. Keep in mind something, that when this happens, and we see this time and time again, the cop shoots some Black guy 57 times, and unarmed guy or whatever. And you say, okay, that's the cops. And then they go to court. And then a jury, none of whom are cops, but they are Americans, all vote to let this guy off. You remember the guy, what was his name? Slater and Scott in South Carolina, where the officer shot the guy in the back 5 times on video and then planted evidence on the guy. All on video, completely violated the law. They went to trial, and the jury, they had a hung jury. And so after the first one, after the hung jury, the second time he pled guilty and they gave him X amount of years, whatever the case may be. But my point is, we can't just get caught up in saying it's the police and they're all a bunch of racists. The fact of the matter is we're dealing with an American problem. That yes, the cops are going to do it. And then when they go to court, a bunch of jurors are going to let them go. Well, are the cops somehow separate from the jurors? Are their thoughts? No. What it reflects is the view of America towards our class system, our caste system, and the people who are in the lower classes and the lower castes are viewed as a danger, are viewed as a problem, and therefore the people in the upper classes don't want the people in the lower classes to feel that they have I guess I'll use a legal term, the standing oftentimes. It's almost a Dred Scott thing. It's almost like to say, we don't want these people to feel that they have the standing, legal or cultural or social, to push back against the police or to push back against the white society. I think that's really part of it. I think part of it is people looking at this saying, if we allow Blacks or Hispanics or whoever to come to court and to be, to get a fair shot, then that means they have the standing to push back against the system. And that kind of challenges our caste system, as a whole. So we'd rather just say, okay, a Black person got shot, right, wrong, or indifference. Whoever, the police are always going to be held as right, because that's something that maintains our caste system, our class system. And maybe that's a little complicated, but it seems to make sense to me.
Okay. Furthermore on this case, I want to ask you a little bit more about a technicality. Did you have a follow-up, Fam, or is that okay?
No. Yeah, no. Okay. Go ahead.
Is it true that some police departments train their officers to empty their clips when firing? Because, that was a situation. We saw that, we saw what happened with Jalen Walker, right? They said he fired out of the car. The white kid in West Virginia, I'm so sorry, I don't have his name with me. He had a gun. He was threatening to kill himself. And then all of a sudden, they just unleashed in both situations. And then somebody said, and I don't know if this is true, and this is why I said I got to get Garland on. I probably could have just, texted you and get an answer. But is it true that police departments train their officers to empty their weapon? And then why?
Okay, I can say this. In 27 years as a police officer, and many of those years I was in charge of our training academy, which included, and our training division, which included firearms training for all of our officers. I have never known of an instance where officers were specifically trained to empty their clip. Now, so let me tell you a little bit about firearms training when you go to the range. You do various things. For instance, we'll say, all right, we're going to be at 15 yards. When I blow the whistle, we'll give instructions. You'll go up, you'll shoot twice, and then you'll cover the target. right? You'll go up and you're only going to have 3 rounds in your magazine. You're going to fire 3 rounds, and then you're going to pretend that one arm has been hit, and you're going to have to change out and put another magazine with only using one hand. So what I can say is, when you're on the range, you do a variety of different scenarios. Pretending it's real life. What would happen if you were shooting and you got hit in one arm? What would happen if you ran out? What would happen if you only had 2 rounds? Shoot 2 and cover, things of that nature. So within the course of fire, as they would call it, on a range, you're going to do all different kinds of things, including, all right, come up and fire all your rounds, reload, fire again. But that's going to be one of the course of fires. Now at 15 yards, fire 2, cover. On the whistle, fire 2 more, cover the target. On the whistle, fire 2 more. So can I technically say, if one of the courses of fire is fire all your rounds, are you being trained to fire all your rounds? But because the courses of fire vary so much, I wouldn't say that I know of an instance anywhere where people were specifically trained. If you pull that gun, fire till it's empty. In fact, if I were training, that wouldn't make sense, because you're out of, you fire all your rounds and some other body comes up and starts shooting at you again, you're out of rounds. I taught conservation of fire, and a lot of people teach that. Only fire, and the military does too. Only fire the number of rounds that you need to fire at a given time. So I think that's, in my opinion, from what I've seen, I think that's a belief that's kind of going around on the street. But in law enforcement, I've never seen it, and I'm not going to say it hasn't happened, but I've never seen it or seen an instance specifically of that or anything close.
Thank you.
So why would someone do that then? Like, why would they unleash 60 bullets on one dude? Like, what is the justification?
Good question.
Yeah.
A good question. Keep in mind something. There are 2 things you're talking about when you talk about an interaction with a law enforcement officer. There's training, and then there's human emotion. As an example, one of the things that happened during my career was we came upon a time when the issue of police chases and a lot of studies of police chases. And what they found basically was, what happened now, most police departments, almost all of them say, you don't chase people you're not allowed to chase people for common traffic violations. Why? Because most police chases end in an accident, right? And so, the proverbial little old lady with tennis shoes is walking across there and you're chasing some guy for running a stop sign, blop right over, she's dead. You don't want that to happen. The other thing they found was at the end of police chases, officers tend to be hyped up and they freak out and they fire and they go crazy and they do all kinds of things because of adrenaline flying. They're chasing somebody, the adrenaline is going through the roof. So they're not logical, they're not reasonable, they're not necessarily even responding to their training because they're all freaked out. So I think one of the other things that you have to take into account is that when you have officers involved in police chases or all of these high emotional things, they're completely hyped up on adrenaline. That's why it's important in training to try to avoid situations and to try to stop situations where officers are chasing people and everything's gone to hell and everybody's all freaked out, because all the training and everything goes out the window and it just becomes a person who's freaked out losing it.
And just as a follow-up, Garland, on that note, since we're on there already, you don't believe in getting rid, I think if I remember correctly, in defunding the police, getting rid of them. There is an abolitionist movement that a lot of the left is pushing, to try to get rid of policing, because they say it's just, the system is corrupt. So thereby policing under the system is going to be corrupt. So it needs to go. I'm of the belief that the system is corrupt, so any sort of what entity you get is going to be corrupt anyway. So we need to attack the system as a whole. But what is then, in your opinion, is there an ability to reform the police under the system? Is there something that could be done to at least help the situation as it is, even if we are still living in this system?
So let me say this. I'm one not to separate parts of a system. So, and I've used this particular parable, as it were, before, right? A guy goes out to the bar and he goes in the bar and he gets in a fight with some guy in a bar. Then he comes out of the bar and he's driving home and he stops at a red light, gets in an argument with at a red light. Some guy gets out, gets in a road rage fight. Then he comes home. When he gets home, you know what he's probably going to do? Beat the hell out of his wife and kids or whoever his domestic others are. Why? Because this is a violent person who has a violent nature. When I look at the United States and I say, and I say to this, people who are activists who say, we're going to work on this police thing and we're going to stop. And I say, if you think that the United States is going to go around the world, blowing things up, killing people, being gangsters, stealing people's resources, threatening people, starting wars, but at home, for some reason, they're going to be doves. Well, the law enforcement at home, they're going to be nothing like the guys over there in Afghanistan breaking through doors, machine gunning entire families. Then you don't understand the connection that this is a violent system. It only makes sense. Go ask the Palestinians. Go ask somebody who's had U.S. soldiers busting their doors down, machine gunning their families. If they think that there's a way to change the same system at home, the bottom line is Malcolm X referred to Black communities as internal colonies, right? We are the Palestinians of the United States. So I believe that our foreign policy and our and even let me add this, even look at what's happened when it comes to weapons, right? Where more weapons, more and more pump more weapons into the military, more weapons to these countries, give them more powerful weapons, et cetera. And look at police, exactly the same thing. So now the police departments are literally armed by the same weapons manufacturers, tanks and MP5s and things like that are sending this stuff overseas. If you look, I remember when I was a cop and I had on like a white shirt and a black tie, or olive shirt and a black tie, and you look like in Corafam shiny shoes when we started. Now you go look at a cop and they don't look any different from the first, airborne division guy who's dropping out of a plane somewhere. And they are the same guy because when they got back from Afghanistan, they hired him as a cop because that's what they wanted. Let me tell you one more quick story. True story. When I used to work, I actually worked for the ACLU at one point. And I remember talking to a guy who told me that I'm in a particular city. He was tasked with coming up with a, an early warning system, so that if you saw an officer that got in a lot of trouble, right, before he killed anybody or did anything, you could bring the person in there, you could retrain him, you can deal with that, and maybe even fire the person if they didn't stop getting in trouble and complaints and things like that, right? So it was an early warning system. Find the trouble officers, deal with it early. And he said it was working fantastic, right? And the city got rid of him. And he said, why? And they said, quote, "You're turning my lions into lambs." So this city wanted officers that they saw as aggressive out there fighting the good fight. So that's what we're looking at. Can you blame the individual officers? There was an environment being created where they wanted them to be violent and aggressive. And again, you bring them back here from some fight and they're violent and aggressive. Hooray! Go out there and beat the public.
Yeah. And I get PTSD, half of them. And it's like, oh, we got to hire a veteran. And man, it goes on. True or false? It would be a great reform if internal affairs were no longer allowed to investigate the police officers when a situation happens. Instead, having a city board of citizens go ahead and make decisions on how the reform should happen at their police station. In other words, they should no longer be able to investigate themselves. It's almost like Israel with this reporter right now. Oh, we'll do an investigation. Like, no, thank you. I don't think we need your investigation. Go right ahead, Garland.
A couple of things here. I have seen, the police review boards and things like that, and I haven't seen them work. And there are a couple of reasons. Number one, because you don't have people, oftentimes they're not attorneys, they don't have a background in the law, they don't understand police procedures, things of that nature. So that creates an opening for the police department. So you have a bunch of citizens and they're trying to review a shooting of brutality, whatever the case may be, but they don't understand the policies and things of that nature. So then the police department says, oh, don't worry, we'll help you out. We'll send you in some advisors to help interpret that stuff. The advisors come in, and when they talk to them or whoever it is to interpret the policies or whatever, they do it in a way that's beneficial to the officer who has been accused of whatever. So the bottom line is they use the lack of knowledge of the details for these particular citizens to their advantage to help get the officer off if he did something, whether he did something or not. So here's what I think, and this is what I've advocated for. I believe, particularly regarding issues of brutality, violence, physical violence, things of that nature, abuse. There should be, outside of police departments, there should be, whether it's under the Attorney General's office or the state, whether it's federal, whatever the case may be, there should be a separate legal entity that specifically investigates these police departments, police incidents of violence, brutality, excessive force, things of that nature, right? And that group cannot include any retired police officers. They should be some attorneys, there should be professionals, et cetera, like that. But I think, and there should be some level of watchdogs over that, some people over that keeps an eye on what they're doing. There should be a lot of transparency with what they're doing, their investigations. Bottom line is this: I'm with you in that the investigations of excessive force and use and above has to come out of the police department, has to come out of the internal investigations, and it has to go to, we have to create an entity outside of police departments. Because as we know, if you remember in the Freddie Gray thing in Baltimore, which I was working for the ACLU when that all went down, and I was part of that, Marilyn Mosby said then, she said, the Baltimore City Internal Investigation is working as part of the defense team. And that is a fact. And that's what's going to happen every single time. Internal investigations are going to look at it and like, well, there, but for the grace of God, go I. So we got to make sure this guy walks. And that's what they're going to do. They're going to be part of the defense team. So I'm with you. Something has to be done. We can talk about the details, but I think the important thing is these investigations have to come out of police departments and into a separate entity that doesn't have retired police officers, because they'll say, sure, we've got this separate entity that's going to be the investigations. But retired police officers are the ones that have the expertise. So we better go with all retired police officers. And of course, you're going to get the same thing. It's just a different kind of blue, no matter who, shall we say. Gotcha.
Thank you, Garland. Fee?
Shifting to the talk about, the greater police force, which is the national security state apparatus, right? And so recently, the former CIA engineer was convicted of espionage over Vault 7 WikiLeaks release. And so this is Schulte. He was convicted for essentially just allowing the knowledge to get out there. And of course, he still claims he was framed. And it's just basically the CIA, of course, infringing upon the rights of privacy of Americans, everything from, your compute, what's on your computer, to your iPhone or your Android or whatever it is. And the fact is, we have Julian Assange, the case where, of course, they approved his extradition. And we have this whole situation happening, this attack on journalism. We're all being censored. We're all being demonetized. We're being shadow banned. We all talk about this all the time. Where are we at with this situation now? Because it seems like it's getting worse. Now you're convicting. You're trying to convict and give 175 years to a journalist for publishing, and now you're going after a bunch of whistleblowers. Where does this leave us in terms of the system? Because I'm of the belief that if we don't tackle the greater apparatus, everything else is just going to continue.
Yeah, I think we're at an interesting point, because what I see as the issue at hand is the system does not want the truth about who they are to be conveyed to their constituents, to the citizens. Why? Because at the end of an empire, as an empire crumbles, it goes from seeing all of these enemies, on the outside, to seeing the problem being the potential uprisings at home. That's what our system's scared to death of right now. That's what they are concerned about. They are afraid of us. They're not stupid. They understand that they're not meeting our even minimum needs. And we understand as they do, as do they, that's not their job anymore. That we are no longer their constituents,
Right.
that power has been consolidated into a tiny group of people, and we ain't part of that club. So now that we have a system with the illusion of democracy, and some Americans and some people still think there's some level of democracy, they're going to get frustrated and angry because they're going to say, we put you in office and you're supposed to be standing up for us. And when we figure out that, as the more people figure out that they're not, the angrier people will get. So this is about acting to prevent uprisings at home. This is about acting to keep people asleep, to keep people within the false parameters of a democracy that no longer exists, if it ever really did.
You know, there were some people back in the days when people who do independent news, I believe you just saw one of the guys from the Duran, right?
Yeah, Alexander, of course.
Okay, the Cristoforo guy, Alexander.
Yes.
Alex, yeah, okay. He once said, and me and Fam laughed about this, that when, you know, Epstein was good. This was coming to the forefront. He goes, this is so important. This is like the history of everything right now is on the line right now. This is one of the biggest things because it does show clearly that there's a ruling class that are controlling everything, playing by a different set of rules than all of us. That everything we've been taught, you know, is just a facade. There really is no government. It doesn't have any choices. Nancy Pelosi might not be she might be on paper the most powerful person in our government, but really she takes her orders from those up above, those from the World Economic Forum and all these other places and whatnot. With Joshua Schulte, he exposed all these tools that the CIA are using, like they're listening on the phone and smart TVs and this whole 9 yards. To me, it almost has the same kind of significance. Like, wow, he is really proving that, you know, us tinfoil hatters who said they had all this stuff are really not having tinfoil hats on. We just recognize it early. How dangerous, how bad are these tools that they're using that the intelligence apparatus has at their disposal? How dangerous are they?
Well, they're dangerous in a number of ways, but let me put one obvious way. There's no chance of democracy anymore. It ends democracy. Why is that? Look, every person, me, you, anybody we know, you're talking on the phone to people or you're emailing something and you may email or say something that if you wouldn't want everybody to hear that. I mean, it may be the language you use. It may be, you know, the colorful, illusions you use. It may be something, right? It may be whatever the case may be. But because the national security state has all that stuff, anybody that runs, they can take them out. They can take anybody out. Anybody that runs, they can say, oh, this person sent an email back and so saying this about trans people, or it could be interpreted about trans people. Oh, Garland said this about a pretty girl. Oh, whatever. Fiorella said, I hate this person, or whatever the case may be. They can find something. So one of the things I think that's really horrible about all of the the bugging of all of our systems is that it gives them the power to decide who's able to rise up in the political system and who's not. And people know it. So now you have people that, like somebody that may be gay, right? Who may be afraid, and this is legitimate. There are people who are gay who are afraid that if that becomes too public, that it could hurt them politically. It's unfortunate that that's the society we live in, but there's people who have that legitimate fear. We could probably think of a few people right off the bat who may be in Congress or famous people who most people know they're gay, but they don't make a big deal out of it.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Did I say something?
But so we could go on and on. But the point being that they got all this stuff on everybody. Mm-hmm. Everybody. And so they kind of got everybody at their, think about this. And this is important, the whole Hunter Biden thing. We found out that the FBI had that a year before it came out and anybody admitted it. They had it when Donald Trump was being, when they were going after Trump for the whole Ukraine phone call and all that stuff. And he was saying the Ukrainians should investigate Biden. The FBI had the hard drive, and they knew that what Trump was accusing Biden of, Biden's people were doing even worse, but they held it, right? Why? Because that way they could get Biden and whoever was involved to do whatever they want. So the big ugly part of it is not just that they're keeping all of our stuff, which is bad enough, but that is something they can and do use to manipulate what once may have been some form of democracy. That's what really freaks me out.
Fam, anything else?
Yeah, well, so a lot of people are leaving the States, right? Like, I don't know if you've noticed, Garland, but a lot of journalists are leaving the States because they no longer feel safe in the United States. If you're doing any sort of adversarial journalism or even just being on YouTube, everybody's getting taken down, everybody's getting strikes. In a way, they're sanctioning us for telling the truth, right? And so people are going into other countries like Russia, like, you know, the Middle East and et cetera. And they're trying to stay away from the fact that the State Department might, you know, come after somebody. What is happening with Assange is obviously very present in a lot of what we do for obvious reasons. But how do you protect whistleblowers if this is happening? Like, how do you even now begin to fight this crackdown that we're seeing, this censorship, the mass surveillance? At this rate, it seems like all the mechanisms that we were using, whether it was YouTube, whether it's streaming or going even on Sputnik or on RT, I mean, those channels are largely shut down in the United States. How do you provide any sort of protection? Is it wise to tell people to leave the United States? Are we at that moment where this is a solution, or is there just, I guess people should just continue speaking until they can't anymore, right? Is there even a solution? This is a hefty question here.
Right. Well, a couple of things. I think back, you know, as many people know, my mentor was Paul Robeson Jr. And we talked often about his father. And his father did what he did because it's what he believed in and what he stood for. And at some points, you know, he had his passport taken and, you know, lots and lots of money was lost from, you know, his career and things of that nature. But he didn't stop. Even when he was blacklisted, he didn't stop performing. He didn't stop, you know, doing the things that he did because that's what he believed in. I think ultimately, it comes down to people doing what they do because that's what they believe in. And, you know, that's me. You know, right now, look, here's an example. Right now, you know, I have a show on KPFK in Los Angeles. So, I don't mean, it'd be pretty straightforward. I don't care. I talk about it. So I do a show. After my show, there's a guy, Brad Friedman or something, right? He comes on and says, Garland Nixon's a Russian bot, a Russian paid, Russian troll. He should not be on there, blah, 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 right? And people ask me, how do you feel about that? And I'm like, it makes perfect sense to me. I think that's what should happen. I say, look, if somebody was around in 1938 and they were like in Germany saying, you know, I think perhaps we should be a little nicer to the Jews, it would only make sense that 100 people would stand up and say, my God, he's a madman. So in a place where freedom and liberty, those kind of things have deteriorated to the point where they are, it only makes sense that if you try to tell the truth, if you try to challenge power, that there'll be 100 people standing up saying, how dare you challenge power? So that's the way I see it. To me, it makes it even more important to do it. It makes it more important to stand up for what you believe in and say what you have to say. When people are pushing back, it tells you, to me, you're doing the right thing. And now, there are people who leave the country. Nothing wrong with that. In fact, you know, if you want to go to another country, work in other countries, history tells us, I mean, Paul Robeson, again, he lived in the Soviet Union. For years, he lived in England. A lot of Black activists back in the, say, 30s, 40s, 50s, even 60s would go to France, where it wasn't as racist against Black Americans as it, you know, and maybe if you're Moroccan and Algerian, not so great. But if you were a Black American, you could get away with more. So I understand either way, it's what an individual has to do. Some people need a little bit more elbow room. But, you know, I'm just, keep pushing and doing what you're doing.
It's a shame about Brad Friedman because he's an election guy, knows a lot, but yet he's just got TDS and it really just, it's knocked him so off whack, and, you know, like he's lost a lot of followers and whatnot. So that's crazy. The last thing I have to ask, Garland, because I want to get your opinion today, because I brought you on. Obviously, we brought you on. I wanted to talk about policing, and I wanted to ask, you know, as a white man, what my responsibility is. And then I see you tweeting today, and Mr. Michael Langley, who's been appointed as the Marine commander in Africa, you said he's another Uncle Tom. Just doing stuff, pushing colonialism. And I thought it was great, but I did have a chuckle. Why don't you give us a little insight to what you see coming as far as military operations in Africa when it comes to the United States. Because even in the situation when it came to Somalia, at the very end, Donald Trump had brought some troops back home. Joe Biden put them back right in when he got back in. So, I mean, Africa is one of those things. There's a lot of rare minerals and all these other things that we need, cobalt, well, at least the elites need for the fourth industrial revolution. So just give us a quick little synopsis of what you feel is coming in Africa, because a lot of people are not paying attention to it.
So what's going on here is, to me right now in particular, Africa is an extension of the U.S. empire crumbling, the U.S. empire seeing Russia and China and Iran and even Turkey seeing some other countries growing and trying to figure out not how, because if you think about it, you know, when I was in like eighth grade or eighth grade, I played basketball and I wasn't very good. And I wanted to play on the team in ninth grade. So what did I do? I practiced all summer. I got better. I made the team in ninth grade, right? But the other option would have been I could have got a pipe and Tanya Harding, the rest of the players, bashed all of their knees in. And great, now I'm starter because we got nobody else, right? Well, that's kind of what the U.S. empire is doing right now. It's like, hey, you know, technologically, economically speaking, Russia and China are growing. We're not doing so well. We got to drag them down. That's what Africa is about. That's what, and I think it's intentional to put a Black person in charge of AFRICOM to fight the argument that it's racist. Well, it couldn't be possibly be racist. And why we've got a Black person in charge of that? So what they're trying to do is thwart any democratic ideals in and independence in Africa, so that the Africans can look at an offer from the Russians, economic options from the Russians, from the Chinese, from the Americans, from whoever, and say, we want to select the one that works best for our economic interests. They're trying this. That's what AFRICOM's all about right now. It's about that. It's also about controlling trade routes. You know, the Red Sea. Look at what's happening. The Straits of Hormuz and the Red Sea. What's happening on both sides of Saudi Arabia. The way they send their money. Send their oil out to the main shipping channels. So to me, Africa is all about this war against Russia and China, this worldwide attempt futile attempt by the United States to stop Russia and China, which means they have to thwart independence, economic and democratic independence in Africa. And all it's doing is it's pushing these countries further away. I'll end by this. What I see the United States doing, it's the old child with the bunny story, where someone gives the little girl a bunny and she gets in the car and she hugs the bunny, she loves the bunny, and she squeezes the bunny so hard that by the time they get home, the bunny's dead. She loved it so much, she squeezed it to death and killed it, right? The US is trying so hard to hold on to this unipolar moment to world hegemony, to being heads and shoulders above China and Russia. They're squeezing this so hard around the world that they're pushing countries away. They're pushing the African countries, the Latin American countries away. They're squeezing this need to hold on to power and unipolarity so hard that they're killing it faster than it would have normally died.
You know, what a great way to end the segment, right, fam, with the two Nixonisms, right? He said, don't get Tanya Harding. Don't get Tanya Harding. Watch, you know what I'm saying? And then the bunny is getting squeezed. And I think a lot of people do have to pay attention to what's going on in Africa. And I appreciate your insight. In Djibouti, I believe that is one area where China has a base. And China doesn't have many bases outside of its own territory. So there's a lot to pay attention.
One in Djibouti.
In Djibouti. And why do they have that base in Djibouti? That's a very important question. That's something we have to pay attention to. Anyways, fam, you got anything else for Garland?
No. Thank you, Garland. I mean, the countries are coming together too, because they're bringing, the United States is bringing other countries together against them, which is what's funny that's happening. But thank you, Garland, for coming on and having this discussion with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you. If I could make one more comment.
Of course.
Just comment on, before I came on, you guys were talking about the discussion about Vladimir Putin, how the CIA is saying, unfortunately he's doing fine. And there's all this discussion about Putin, not Russia. And my thought on that was, that's part of creating a narrative. Because to talk about the issue of Ukraine and what's going on there, it is important to understand the history of it. So you understand the historical dynamics that created this, right? However, if we only talk about Vladimir Putin, there's no need to talk about history. It's just a person on a given day woke up on the wrong side of the bed and said, I'm an evil guy. I think I'll attack this country. Are there any historical reasons? No, none whatsoever. It's just that I'm an evil guy. That's what I'm doing. So with foreign policy, we have to create, what do we know about Syria? There's no such thing as Syria. There's Assad, and he's evil. What about Venezuela? There's Maduro, and he's evil. So what we do is we create this simplistic Marvel comic style scenario where people see a worldwide evil villain, Lex Luthor-esque villain, who only acts because they're evil. And that way you can keep Americans from looking into the history so they can see this thing through a historical context. And through that context, through that lens, you'll be able to see where the U.S., where NATO, and where our policies fit into this outcome.
That's awesome. That is so awesome.
100% true.
He's been, Garland, you've been to Venezuela before. You should consider coming to Brazil with us to see the election this year. We're going to go to Brazil and check that out. You're more than welcome to come do that little.
Let me know. I'd love to. Send me some info when you're going.
Definitely. We will do that, Garland. Thank you so much for coming on and providing so much clarity. I really do appreciate it, brother.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, Garland.
Oh, Garland Nixon is the man. Love that guy.
Yeah. I mean, that last point was so true. This is why Americans love Hollywood.
Yeah. They got to create a villain that way. Make it so
you got this 007 movies, the Bourne Identity or Jason Bourne movies, all that shit.
Yeah.
I mean,
you ready?
So
let's blitzkrieg through this real quick.
Yeah, of course. So
really
just going on to the Schulte, right?
Yeah, pretty much, because we talked a little bit about it too as well with Garland. I just want to say thank you to AREM for the Super Ray contribution. It is always appreciated on the couch. That is so generous. That is so awesome. Thank you so much, AREM. You mean a lot to us, and you help us every day as much as you can, and that's amazing. We really do appreciate it, and we appreciate everybody who just tunes in and shares. That means the world to us too as well. Thank you so much, Teresa Allen. #land back. Stop the theft. Thank you, Teresa. That's awesome. Game.film is here, fam. Haven't tipped in a while. Sending extra. Much love to Svetlana and the newspaper guy.
Oz, where's my coffee? Where is my coffee? I want my coffee distributed to the masses.
We need to make sure that right now there's a unfortunately there are sanctions.
Are there sanctions?
We can't
on my coffee?
On the coffee because it's no Russian products. So, unfortunately, we just can't do it. Sorry, fam. But once the sanctions are lifted, we'll get the coffee out.
Sanctions kill, fam. Don't sanction me.
And when you're taking away people's coffee, you're crossing the shit line.
I'm saying, I had some coffee today. Today was a coffee day.
Yes. U.S. continues, fam, to jail whistleblowers and freedom seekers. And the reason why I put the freedom seekers in there is we're going to talk about a little bit about Mr. Schulte, but we're also going to talk about another guy named Ross Ulbricht, who I got to meet his mom at Freedom Fest and give her a big hug. I met her during that anti-socialism panel, fam. So she looked back as I was yelling at everybody and looked back at me. I was like, wow, this is crazy. But let's talk about this really quick. This is from the Dissenter. The jury finds former CIA programmer guilty of leaking the CIA hacking materials to WikiLeaks. And this is something we talked about with Garland. The fact that these things can be released. Now they're holding something over all of us at all times. They can control the narrative. They can ruin somebody. They can make people do what they want them to do because they have all our information, fam. A federal judge in New York convicted the former CIA employee Joshua Schulte of violating the Espionage Act when he allegedly released materials on the CIA's hacking capabilities to WikiLeaks. This was the second trial against Schulte. In March 2020, his first trial ended in a mistrial on several Espionage Act charges, but was found guilty of contempt of court and lying to the FBI. Unlike the first trial, Schulte represented himself and argued his case. He again maintained he was not the source of the leaks published by WikiLeaks. A jury deliberated for nearly 3 days before announcing a verdict. Judge Jess M. Furman in the Southern District of New York did not schedule schedule a sentencing date because there are other charges pending against Schulte. Known as Vault 7 materials, WikiLeaks began releasing documents in March 7, 2017. They came from what WikiLeaks described as an isolated high-security network situated inside the CIA Center for Cyber Intelligence. Documents revealed how the CIA could target iPhones, Androids, and Samsung TVs and convert the devices into microphones into bugs used to spy on targeted persons, which means everybody can be targeted if they want to. Malware was also developed to infect Microsoft Windows users, and the CIA was hoarding security vulnerabilities in software and hardware that they could use for their covert operations instead of notifying companies that the users were at risk of being hacked.
Fam, this is why I literally all the time when I'm talking to somebody or when I'm talking to like my parents or texting someone, I'm like, okay, Kevin and Kyle, like,
yeah,
haha, I'm joking or blah, blah, blah. Like, because it's real. They could literally be listening at any given moment. And that's the reality. So yes, I joke about it a lot, but I mean, I'm expecting these people to be listening at all times. I mean, what are we going to do?
We laugh about it. The fact they gave them the names Kevin and Kyle is cute. Fam, did you ever see the company that has the sleeves where you put the phone inside a sleeve and then you zipper it? And it's like a protective sleeve that doesn't allow it to get hacked or bugged or somebody sent a signal. That company is probably making a ton of money, fam. I'm going to get you one of those for your birthday or Christmas. Christmas is coming up soon, so maybe grandfather Putin can do something. Klaus. It was one of the largest leaks, fam, of information in the history of the CIA, and a huge embarrassment for the CIA director then, Mike Pompeo, which would probably add to the fact that why he wanted to whack Julian Assange, 007 style, who responded by labeling WikiLeaks as a non-state hostile intelligence agency and developing secret war plans against the media organization that included kidnapping or even killing the WikiLeaks founder, Julian Assange. The U.S. government has charged Julian Assange with violating the Espionage Act, and the U.K. government authorized his extradition, fam. This is one of the reasons it's not just collateral murder. That collateral murder is probably one of the worst. But the fact that Joshua Schulte allegedly got them all this information from Vault 7. Vault 7, like I said, is another thing that's really, it just blows the cap off everything. Now we know. It's like these guys are listening on us. They're spying on us. They're tracking our data. They're storing our data, guys. This is a fascist agency, and they have all the tools at their hands, fam, to do what they need to do to keep us enchained and enslaved all the time. That's it. I have another subject, another person here I want to talk about. His name is Ross Ulbricht. Okay. This is Ross Ulbricht. It says free Ross Ulbricht. Ross Ulbricht is the imprisoned founder of the Silk Road, the dark net marketplace. The reason why I wanted to bring this to the table today, fam, because I want to let people know it's not just about our elites going after anybody who tells on them, because there is this kind of feeling that people have, well, you know what, I can live within their bubble and I can still live a peaceful life. You know what I'm saying? I don't have to worry about them doing anything.
Right. I don't have anything to hide.
Exactly. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Catherine Austin Fitz, she said on a show today, she says, you're not going to be living free and relaxed when they come in and take your family away. And that's where we're getting right now. You know what I'm saying? Ross Ulbricht created a product called the Silk Road, where people can use Bitcoin and other money to just connect people to sell whatever they want without going through government regulations, without having to deal with any of that shit. Ross Ulbricht, born in 1984, fam, is a former darknet market operator, most famous for creating and running the Silk Road market. Here it is, fam. He was arrested in 2013, and 2 years later, a Manhattan federal jury found him guilty on 7 charges, including conspiracy to launder money, conspiracy to commit computer hacking, conspiracy to traffic narcotics by means of the internet, and continuing a criminal enterprise. He's the so-called kingpin in charge. Ulbricht, a first-time inventor, was convicted of actually selling illegal drugs and other items himself, but of creating and operating a site where others did. In other words, he didn't do it himself. You know what I'm saying? It was done by other people, but he was sentenced to life in prison, fam. Ulbricht used the pseudonym Dread Pirate Roberts online, is sentenced to spend the rest of his life, fam, in federal prison.
Wow.
Here are some key takeaways. Ross Ulbricht, the dread pirate Roberts of the internet, founded the operated the dark marketplace called the Silk Road in 2011 until it was shut down by the U.S. government in 2013. The site was a marketplace that included criminal activity, including drugs and weapon sales. The site's users paid using cryptocurrency. Encryption protected their identities. In 2013, Ulbricht was arrested and indicted on 7 charges, including conspiracy to commit to launder money, conspiracy to commit computer hacking, conspiracy to traffic narcotics by means of the internet, and continuing a criminal enterprise. Ulbricht was found guilty on all counts and was sentenced to 2 life imprisonment terms plus 40 years to be served concurrently with no chance of parole. He remains in prison today, with the request of appeal has been denied by the United States Courts of Appeal for the Second Circuit. The bottom line, Ross Ulbricht is infamous for creating the running the Silk Road market, and while he claims that his intentions for starting the site were altruistic, a federal jury found him guilty on 7 serious charges, including conspiracy to traffic narcotics, and he was sentenced to spend the rest of his life in prison. Mr. Ulbricht's many supporters decry his sentence as unjust, and almost 500,000 people have signed a petition for clemency in his case. So when you got him in jail and you got Donald Trump releasing Kodak Black and Lil Wayne and leaving this guy in prison and leaving Julian Assange in prison when he has a chance, it just tells you what side he's on. This is from his Medium, because he's writing letters and then they're putting on a Medium site and putting them out there for people to look at. My future died that day in court when I was sentenced to life without parole. When I got back to the federal detention center, I did not go straight to my cell block as usual. This time, I was interviewed first to judge whether I was suicidal. I wasn't, and thankfully, I convinced them I wasn't, and I would have spent a few days in one of the dreaded suicide watch cells. I understand why they did that, though. Lots of lifers are suicidal. There is no parole in the federal system, so life means your whole life. It is the same as a death sentence. It just takes longer. And that was written by him in August 24th, 2021. This is what he tweeted the other day. This is just a couple of days ago. Today, I was trained to be on a suicide watch companion. It will be my job to sit with prisoners who have become suicidal. I hear it's a difficult job, but hopefully I can help some people. So you can see what he's doing, fam, while he's serving his life sentence. He's trying to be of service. He's trying to maintain hope. There's hope maybe one day of appeal, some clemency, but that is Ross Ulbricht. His mom was at Freedom Fest. He was known as, a libertarian of sorts, believing in a free market, whatnot, and using cryptocurrency. So that's, I just want to bring to the table just to show that it's not just about jailing whistleblowers. It's about jailing freedom seekers. So when you hear, like, when Steve talks about parallel societies and stuff, and we always say, listen, we're not going to be able to do that because we live in a country where it's illegal to sleep in your car in some states. It's illegal to collect rainwater. It's illegal to open up other stuff online. They're not going to let you do whatever you just want to do. This evil empire needs to be beat back before anything can happen. And that's my words for this section and my plan of the day.
Yeah, we live in in the United States, it's a prison. It's just a prettier prison.
Yeah.
It's like you're on a very long leash that's getting shorter and shorter and shorter. Mm-hmm. And you're finding that you can't move around as much as you used to. And that's what it is. I mean, and you're finding that the bars are becoming more clear, the prison cell. And that's just how it's going to get for everybody, It's really, I definitely see it more, like I said, being here, how bad it is in the States and how bad police are. I was talking to a few people from Russia last night, and they were saying how they couldn't believe how our police were, like how bad our police were. Like, I was trying to explain to them that the police are terrible and that they point guns at you, that they shoot, they shoot at journalists, at protesters, that they're doing all of this stuff. And like how I hear about the police in Russia, and I don't see them in the same way. I don't get that sense of fear when I'm surrounded by some security guy. And they have them, like at RT, there's a security guy, there's security everywhere. But I don't feel that Like they're going after me. Like they're looking, they're just there. They're just doing their job. They're not trying to like be like, okay, you know, they're serious, but they're not like, it's a completely different thing. And, you know, they're not as armed as we are, or as our police are. And it's a whole other thing. And Garland's absolutely right. We can't expect a country that goes around overthrowing leaders and vilifying, creating these villains, movie villains out of you know, these leaders of these countries to try to brainwash the American people to hate them. And you know, they were asking me questions, these Russians, like, what do you think of these people? What do you know, why do they hate Putin? Why do they make it like we hate Americans? We don't hate Americans. We have a lot of families in Ukraine. We have a lot of friends in Ukraine. We don't want this war. I mean, every single Russian person that I've talked to has said it's really sucks about Ukraine because we're so close to Ukraine. They're like our family. They're like our friends, our brothers. Not a single Russian that said, I want to beat these Ukrainians to death. I mean, there might be that sentiment against the Azov battalion or against the people that are killing, that are more militarily involved and that are involved in that whole tactical aspect of the thing. But there's not that sentiment in the majority of people in Moscow. I just haven't seen it. And so it's just, you know, I'm like, well, they're trying to make us hate you and hate Putin. So we don't look at our own leaders and hold them accountable. So that's where we're at in the United States. And I think people are starting to see through it, fam. I think we're at a moment that I didn't see before where people are actually starting to see through a lot of shit. And it does give me hope, but at the same time, I fear it may be a little late.
Yeah. Fam, we got a Super Ray contribution from Scotty Johnson. Thank you, Scotty the Bull, for the Super Ray contributions. Always appreciate it on the couch. Fam, I'm going to release a video on our Yo Vegans Instagram, kind of fire it back up. I went and reviewed a vegan pizzeria. It's pizzeria that has vegan food. And let me just...
Is it Chicago pizza?
No, it was Philly pizza. So it was very much like New York pizza. And it's a really cool video. Joey Yakuza, Joe Sakata, he cut it up, my boy. But it's a pizzeria that has vegan products, not a vegan place that has pizza, because I wouldn't like to go to a vegan place that has pizza because they usually give you skate ring pizza. It's bad. I mean, I appreciate the fact you do it in vegan and you get the products and that's good, but it's a pizzeria where the guy is conscious enough to go, yo, I have vegans and, you know, my sauce is vegan, my dough is vegan, so why not just get some vegan cheese and some vegan meat products and make it happy? So it's a cool pizzeria. I'm going to put it up on Yo Vegans. I just got it done. I wanted to go in and get a video of the guy himself, and he wasn't there the week before, so I had to wait another week, but it's done. It's a little 2-minute video, and I'll have that up, and we'll share that, and we'll get that out there, fam. It's a little review from Pasta, and I think I was wearing this shirt, in fact. A lot of people like this shirt, fam. We have Casual Fridays here at the studio. What's going over by you? Is RT not doing Casual Fridays? You're going to have to give me somebody's number. That's just, you know, I'm saying... You have to have Casual Fridays.
Fam.
It's for positive reinforcement.
If you're going to be on camera, there's nothing casual about it.
Teresa Alon says, hello. Leonard Peltier, 2 life sentences. Yeah. Leonard Peltier, a Native American activist, got 2-year life sentences. I remember this for aiding and abetting murder, they said. You know what I'm saying? Not that he was there, but for aiding and abetting.
He wasn't Native American, but he was an activist, right?
He was a Native American activist. Yeah.
Oh, he was Native American? I didn't know that.
I know he was a Native American activist. You know,
he was an activist for Native Americans. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not like ethnically Native American is what I'm saying.
I don't know. I know he was born in North Dakota. So, yeah. I believe he was a PSL member too. Vegan pizza. I love it. I love you too. And I know you love my shirt, John Tho Emily. Thank you so much. Loves my shirt, fam. Casual Fridays here. And Jack Clergman wants to know what's wrong with Chicago pizza, fam.
I told you, Kid and I are we're in a war right now.
Yeah.
Okay. And he sanctioned New York pizza. I sanctioned Chicago pizza.
Fam, that's not how that's not how peace is obtained.
Fam, no. There
Just
cannot
Chicago
be
pizza as a casserole doesn't mean anything.
And I even said New York isn't, winning here. It's Italy's winning. Italian pizza, real Italian pizza.
I'm going to
and New York is second. now it's going to be World War III because now you're like a third party coming in.
That's right.
Guys, this is ridiculous here. And Italian pizza is the best.
Italian pizza is not the best. New York pizza.
You haven't had Italian pizza.
I am an Italian American, but fam, I don't need to have it to know that we put it on the map.
Yes, you do.
My pizza invented that in New York, fam.
Pasta. Italian pizza surpasses New York pizza. I'm very sorry.
Fam, it is.
We'll take a fam trip to
flatbread in Italy. It's flatbreads. We have pizza.
No.
All right, that's it. I can't do it, guys.
We're gonna go to Italy, okay, and we're gonna make a video. We're gonna hold us accountable. We gotta make a video, and Pops is gonna, when he admits it, you're just gonna laugh at him, okay?
I don't know if they'll have vegan pizza in Italy, fam. So if I have to cheat,
no, fam, you're gonna have to eat like regular pizza.
Maybe
at that
one
point.
slice, one time, maybe. If we go to Italy, I might commit to that and stuff like that, but not the whole thing. I am back on my veganism, fam. 6 weeks right now, loving it, feeling great. So I'm going to stick to the veganism because
no mid frolic, no
mid frolic. I was too bad for too long, fam, and it hit me like a pie in the face, and I went right back on 6 weeks now, strong, and I'm gonna keep it going. I love it, I really do. In fact, I went to the gym today before I came back because I know that you're scared. You don't want us Italian men dying before we're 75 years old.
I don't.
Like half the cast of The Sopranos, that's just dropping now.
I know. That's Fugatz. That's Fugatz.
It was Paulie Walnuts who once said, "Get the hell out of here." For Pasta Jardula.
Fiorella.
And Oz on the ones and twos. Remember, guys, you can go to we still have it open, our givesendgo.com/support the Convo Couch. We're going to fire that thing back up and get ready for Brazil. Thank you so much for watching. Have an amazing.
You better be watching your Portuguese, learning your Portuguese, fam.
You know what? I don't need to, fam.
Guys, the love language doesn't work when you're actually working, fam. Come on.
Who said anything about the language of love, fam? Tell everybody Convo out, will you, so we can get out of here? I was going to get some sleep. Look at him.
I don't do tricks.
Bye, everybody.
Steve.
Convo out.
Bye, guys.
Convo out.